Thank you, Kent. Thank you, ladies.
Scott, can I just say something? I'd like to thank Jim for playing the drums. Man, that's awesome.
Well, good. You beat me to it. I was fixing to tell everybody to get with this young man afterwards and tell him he needs to be up there every week. He's an invaluable addition. So now that was a great job this morning. Good morning, everybody. Good. You see, if I do this long enough, everybody finally wakes up. So I know everybody was still a little bit sleepy when we got started. I know I was. I'm going to start this with a prayer. I'm going to need it today. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, Father. I pray that in the next few minutes that you allow me to put myself to the side, Father. I pray that each and every word that comes out of my mouth is your words, Father. And I pray that each and every one here gets the message that you have for them. We know that's going to be different for each of us because we're all in different places in our walk with you, Father. I pray these things in the name of our Son Jesus Christ, your Son Jesus Christ. Amen. See, I'm tongue-tied this morning. I'm not worried about that. I stay tongue-tied. I've been accused of English being my second language before, so, that's not that unusual. I know when Lori and I first got together, I would notice her sitting around, and she'd just be looking at me. She's like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm listening to you talk. So she's like, I had never heard anybody talk like that before. All right, today we're going to get into, what are we going to get into? We're going to get into Bible study. I didn't think I left that color. I almost had too much time to get this one ready. I had so much yesterday, so if I start getting long, somebody just throw something at me, and we'll go ahead and cut it short. I prefer peppermints, not water bottles. I get... Yeah, right. Yeah, we just got a bunch of things to throw. We handed everybody out stuff this morning to throw. So we're going to get into that Sunday. This being Palm Sunday, we're going to talk about that Sunday before Jesus was crucified. So, like I said, I know Jim asked me a couple weeks ago, I think it was, when I was cooking the briskets, he's like, so what verse are you going with? What verse are you anchored with? I was like, I don't know. There's too many. I had so many different directions going through my mind. Just like I said, I almost had too much time to put this one together, and I think I did cut it down enough. But so let's get into this. But first, I want to tell you a story. About a while back, long before Lori and I ever met, we were out working cows one Friday. We'd actually gotten off. We were working cows one Friday. My cousin was down from Kansas City, and he's a city boy through and through. So just to kind of say thanks for all of his hard work, that Saturday we all went down to the stockyards in Fort Worth, and we went to Risky's Steakhouse. And we ordered a bunch of appetizers sitting on the plate. There was like some fried pickles and maybe some stuffed jalapenos, and we ordered a calf fries while we were sitting there. And he was just sitting there chowing down on the calf fries. Man, this stuff's good. He was just in love with it. He's like, what is this? I said, don't worry about it. I said, don't worry about it. So just, you like it, that's all that matters. So he just kept hounding. Yeah, exactly. So a little bit later on, we were just about done with the appetizer. He's like, okay, come on, tell me what it is. I was like, well, you remember yesterday? He's like, well, yeah. I was like, remember those pieces that are no longer there? He's like, yeah, that's what that is. And he was like, woo, from that moment, as soon as he found out what it really was, he didn't like it anymore. He didn't want no part of it. I'm like, dude, you just ate almost the whole plate. Now you're going to say, blah? No, I don't want to hear it. So I don't want to hear it. That's not the way it works. So Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday marks the beginning of Holy Week. It commemorates Jesus' entry into Jerusalem. He rode in on a donkey. I'm just going to read this. I wrote it. So, as he rode in on a donkey, a symbol of peace rather than conquest, the crowds gathered, laying down their cloak and waving palm branches in celebration. They shouted, Hosanna! recognizing him as a hoped-for Messiah. This moment fulfilled Old Testament prophecy, Zechariah 9:9, yet the crowd's understanding was limited. Many expected the political king, not a suffering Savior. Palm Sunday captures both the joy of Jesus' arrival and the tension that would soon lead to the cross. Zechariah 9:9. I don't remember if I put it there. Now I can get away from this and go to my normal roaming around. Rejoice greatly, daughter of Zion. Shout in triumph, daughter of Jerusalem. Behold your king. That hadn't done that in a while. Your king is coming to you. He is righteous and endowed with salvation, humble and mounted on a donkey, even on a colt, the foal of a donkey. What's the significance of the colt? And even the donkey. The colt, they're calling it a colt because it's never been ridden. No one had ever been on that horse's back, or donkey's back. That's the first time anyone had been on his back. And that's just the significance of the colt. Let's go over to Matthew 21, 1 through, I think, 6 is what I've got in this part. When they had approached Jerusalem and had come to Bethphage at the Mount of Olives, Jesus then sent 2 disciples, saying to them, go into the village opposite you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied there and a colt. Get a colt with it. Untie them and bring them to me. And if anyone says anything to you, you shall say, the Lord needs them, and he will send them on immediately. Now this took place so that what was spoken through the prophet would be fulfilled. Say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on the donkey, even on a colt, the foal of a donkey. And that's in Matthew 21:5, quoted back to Zechariah. Now in this instance, Jesus deliberately fulfilled Zechariah 9:9. Why did he do that? It was his first indication to the people that it wasn't his first, he had many, but it was an indication to the people that he was not a political warrior. That's not why he was there. He came in peace. The sign of riding a donkey in, when a king rode a donkey into battle, or king, not into battle, but when a king rode a donkey in, they were coming in peace. When a king rode his war horse in, get ready. He deliberately fulfilled this prophecy to show them that what they were thinking was not his intention. That's not why I'm here. That's not my purpose. Jesus redefined kingship in that one moment. If you think about King David, what was he? Great warrior. All of the big kings that had been leaders and successful leaders up until that point in the world were great warriors. They were looking at Jesus as their king. They were looking for that great warrior. They weren't looking for a king with humility, that won people over with love, that treated people the way that Jesus treated people, that was there for a greater purpose than even they could imagine. In Matthew 21, starting with verse 6, the disciples went and did just as Jesus had instructed them, and brought the donkey and the colt and laid their cloaks on them, and he sat on the cloaks. Most of the crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others were cutting branches from the trees and spreading them on the road, palm leaves. Now the crowds going ahead of him and those who followed were shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord, Hosanna in the highest. There's a reference to David. David, what was David? Great warrior. This is still what they're thinking. When he had entered Jerusalem, all the city was stirred, saying, who is this? And the crowds were saying, this is Jesus the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee. The crowd was praising Jesus all along, but that's because they were expecting to be freed from the oppression of the Romans. They were expecting Jesus to come in and set them free. Just as they were set free out of Israel was set free out of Egypt, out of slavery and out of bondage, they expected Jesus to come in and free them from the Romans. They were living underneath Roman rule at that time. That was their goal. That was what they were hoping for. That's what they were looking for. Their Hosanna was sincere. They meant it. They meant every word that they were saying. They were praising him. But it was shallow. It was rooted in what they wanted. It was rooted in what they wanted Jesus to be, not what Jesus was. It was rooted in what benefited them in the moment, not what Jesus had for them. Just like when Sean was sitting there eating the calf fries, he loved them as long as he didn't know what they were. They loved Jesus as long as they didn't know why he was there. As long as it fit their description of what they wanted. Just like as long as those calf fries fit Sean's description of, he knew it was beef. That's all he knew. But once he found out it wasn't just beef, I mean, it is just beef, but once he found out it wasn't just beef, that totally changed his mind. That totally changed his perspective on the whole thing. He didn't like it. That's what happened here. Let's go over to John chapter 12, verse 12. On the next day, when the large crowd had come to the feast, see, I told you, English is a second language. On the next day, when the large crowd that had come to the feast heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, they took the branches of the palm trees and went out to meet him and began shouting, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, indeed the King of Israel. Jesus, finding a young donkey, sat on its back, as it is written, Do not fear, daughter of Zion. Behold, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt. Again, over in John, king. They're still looking for a political liberator. That's not what they're going to get in this situation. The palm leaves and the cloaks and the rolling out the red carpet is a symbol of victory. That's what they used to do for the kings when they were returning home from battle. Once the battle had been won, they would meet them and line the roads and throw palm leaves down and throw their cloaks down and give everything over to them. That's what they were doing with Jesus, as though the battle was already won. It was, they just didn't know what the battle was. Let's go to John 12:16. These things his disciples did not understand at the first. But when Jesus was glorified, when he was raised from the dead, then they remembered that these things were written from him and that they had done these things for him. So the people who were with him when he called Lazarus out of the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to testify about him. For this reason also, the people went to meet him, because they heard that he had performed this sign. So the Pharisees, I love this. So the Pharisees said to one another, You see that you are not accomplishing anything. Look, the world has gone after him. We killed him. He came back. They're gone. Where'd everybody go? We didn't accomplish a single thing. I love the picture of that. But the interesting part of this, even the disciples, you'll hear a lot nowadays. One of the big things that I see on Facebook, one of the objections that I hear in conversations with, we'll just say non-Christians or marginal Christians, people that are fighting it. Why do we spend so much time studying Paul? Why do we spend so much time studying this? Why do we spend so much time studying that? Why don't we just follow the Gospels? If the apostles who walked with, lived with, ate with, drank with, slept with, was with Jesus 24/7. If they didn't get it, how arrogant is it of us to think that we can get it without a little bit further education and without the rest of the Bible, without everything else? They lived with him. They heard everything that he said. They saw everything that he did. They saw the miracles. They saw everything that was going on. They didn't get it because they had their picture of what they wanted, not of what he is, not of why he was here, not of his purpose, of his mission. And they refused to pay attention. At least they came around once they saw him walking the earth again. Okay, maybe we ought to listen to this guy. He's back here walking with us, and we saw what happened. But in that moment, they didn't get it. God's truth is sometimes revealed over time. How many times have we, I know it's true in my life, as I'm going through something, it's very hard to see the lesson. It's very hard to see the purpose. It's very hard to see what I'm supposed to be getting out of it. But as I look back, I see the progression of everything that I went through, and I see what the lesson is. Is it because we have our preconceived notions written into, and, Jesus, I asked you to help me, He's like, well, I'm helping you, but you're not listening. I know we were talking this morning, and, you poke somebody on the shoulder all the time. Occasionally, you got to, give them a thump on the back of the head, wake up. Unfortunately, I need skillets. Thumps don't work, so I'm a slow learner. I'm a little bit stubborn. I'm a little bit mule-headed. I'm going to do it once, and then if it don't work, I'm probably going to do it again just to make sure the first time wasn't a fluke. So, but over time, what all that represents is if we got all of God's revelation all at one time, there's no way we would understand it. When you have your children, when they're 2, 3 years old, do you give them all the whys and all the whats every time you tell them to do something, or you tell them don't do something? And then over time, they figure out and they learn, okay, don't touch that pot. Well, but I want to touch the pot. Well, the pot's hot. Don't touch the pot. I know I did. I spilled a big pot of boiling water on me when I was a kid. So I learned the pot's hot. Like I said, I'm stubborn. So even if Mom would have told me from the beginning, don't touch the pot because of this, because of this, because of this, and I've got this coming for you at the end of the day, all I would have heard was don't touch the pot. How many times do we focus on what we're told not to do instead of all the other warnings that come behind it? Sometimes God, that's just kind of the way we learn. Because honestly, I didn't have trust in Mom in that moment. When she said don't touch the pot, I'm like, why? How come? Why can't I touch the pot? I want to touch the pot. I didn't have faith in her process because I didn't know. I wanted to know for myself. God's revelation comes out over time. It comes out over, years. It comes out over our whole life. That's why the sanctification, see, I told you, English second language, sanctification process is a lifetime process. We never get there. It's a journey. Over the course of that journey, we're constantly learning. God is constantly revealing things to us as we go through this on a day-to-day basis. Understanding often follows obedience. Trust His plan for your life. I still don't know to this day that had I not touched the pot that day that I wouldn't understand why not to touch the pot. I learned pretty quick. But there are other times in my life that I've felt God leading me somewhere, felt God telling me to do something. And there's been times that I went ahead and did it, thinking I was there for one reason. But once it was all said and done, finding out I was there for a totally different reason. God had something totally different in mind for me to do while I was there, or for me to learn while I was there, while I was doing. But it was that initial obedience and trusting in God's plan, even though I was wrong. I misunderstood what he wanted, but I did it anyway. And when I got there, okay, now I see. Now I see. But that requires us to trust him regardless, because we don't know. He sees all things. He sees the future. We see, I can't tell you what's going to happen 5 minutes ago at the back door. 5 minutes ago is pretty easy. I can't tell you what's going to say. I told you. 5 minutes from now at the back door. We don't know that. We don't know that. He sees tomorrow. He sees the day after. He sees forward into eternity. He knows what he has planned. I didn't decide what I was going to wear until it was about time to walk out the door this morning. I don't plan that far ahead. So he's got the rest of eternity planned. I think I need to trust him. I need to trust what he has in store for me. Because Lord knows if I'm left up to my own devices, I'm going to get into all kinds of stuff. So I've proven that over the course of my life. Purposeful obedience planning. I don't know where I came up with that, but after James said these things, he was going on ahead. And we're in Luke 19:28 right now. After Jesus said these things, he was going on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. When he approached Bethpage and Bethany near the mount that is called Olivet, he sent 2 of the disciples, saying, "Go into the village ahead of you there. As you enter, you will find a colt tied on which no one has yet ever sat, and untie it and bring it here. And if anyone asks you, why are you untying it, you shall say this, the Lord has need of it." So those who were sent left and found it, just as he had told them. And as they were untying the colt, its owner said to them, "Why are you untying the colt?" They said, "The Lord has need of it." They obeyed his request without question. And what happened? God's planning, Jesus' planning, knowing what's going to happen in the future, he told them, word for word, step by step, what was going to happen. They obeyed him. They went there, word for word, step by step. That's what happened. He has the plan, not us. We have to be intentional about our obedience with God. I know I said a few weeks back up here, if you feel like God's leading you to do something, do it. Because you don't know if it's you or you don't know if it's God. If it's God's plan for you, you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss out on the chance, on the opportunity to receive the blessing that he has for you, to learn what he's trying to teach you, to bless someone else in any way that you can. But that takes intentional planning towards being obedient to God. You have to be intentional about that. It has to be, if you leave, well, I feel like God's wanting me to go up there. Yeah, I'd rather sleep in Saturday. That's not being very intentional. I feel like I'm supposed to be here, but I'd rather go on vacation. I've had this trip planned for God knows how long, and he knows. He'll understand. What if his intention was for you to be there? God doesn't care about your trip. God doesn't care about your Saturday morning. He doesn't care that you have to watch your cartoons with coffee. That's not his purpose. We have to trust in his plan. If we're feeling something, there's a reason. If there's a reason we're feeling somewhere, if there's a reason we feel we should be doing something different, we probably should. As much as I do like watching cartoons with my coffee in the morning, there's mornings I need to get up and get busy. But I have to be intentional about planning on being obedient. Obey even when you don't fully understand. Faithful steps of obedience bring clarity. I mentioned a few minutes ago, there's been times in my life that I felt God asking me to do something. And I went there. There's been times that I didn't know why. There's times that I thought I knew why. But every time I found out why after I went. It doesn't matter what you have at the beginning. It doesn't matter what you think you know. It doesn't matter anything else. The fact is that you go do. The fact is that you follow God's guidance. If God's leading you to go say something to someone, go do it. If God's leading you to go pray for someone, don't say nope. Go do it. I struggle with that one too. Mine's not nope, it's But it's all about that being obedient. Because Jesus has the plan. And Palm Sunday, in this whole spectacle, this was part of the plan. But do you realize that a large number of those people that were laying down the palm leaves and laying down those cloaks, lining the road cheering for Jesus, are the same ones that said crucify him once they found out he wasn't there for the reason they thought he was there. That's where that shallow understanding comes from. They had a very shallow, they put their wants in front of what the actual purpose is. But those very same people that were praising him, the very same people that were lifting him up, the very same people that were cheering for him, are the same ones that yell crucify him. We got to do this a little quicker than I thought I would. Maybe. The king we need. Jesus entered not just Jerusalem, but humanity's deepest need for salvation and for hope. What was the one thing? We all know we need salvation, but we think about this. I thought about this while I was doing this. Jerusalem at the time, they were under Roman rule. They were somewhat treated fairly, but not necessarily, because they still weren't allowed to do everything that they would normally do. They needed deliverance. They needed salvation. But they didn't know they needed salvation from themselves. They thought the salvation that they needed was from the Romans. That salvation is from ourselves. Because this isn't the end game. They needed hope. They needed hope of freedom. Jesus coming, dying for us, and giving us a pathway to eternal life with him, where our pain's gone, where our sorrow's gone. I finally get to weigh 150 pounds. That's only attainable through him. The sorrow is gone. That hope is only attainable for him. I have no hope of that here on this earth. I have beat my body up one side, down the other. I'm going to hurt till the day I die. I know it. The only hope I have at one point is with Jesus, that I will not hurt anymore. I won't have to deal with the evil, with the thickets, with the thorns, with the missteps of this world. Not the king the crowd expected, but he is the king we all desperately need, isn't it? Because we can't do it by ourselves. We're weak. We can't do it. We need him. So lay down your cloak in the palms. You don't have to lay down the palms. You can take them with you. Prefer you do. If not, throw them in the trash can on the way out. But lay down your burdens. Lift up your praises. And set the correct expectations for Jesus. What led to the crowd going from being so excited on Palm Sunday to screaming, "Crucify him" on Friday, are misplaced expectations. Do we set the realistic expectations in our relationship with Jesus? Do we do our part? Do we go to him in prayer? Do we trust him? Do we obey him? Do we do what we're asked to do? Do we set, I think I've said, do we have the right Jesus in our minds? Do we have the right Jesus in our hearts? We're far enough removed from this. We don't have the excuse of being in the middle of it and not understanding it. We're 2,200 years later, or 2,000 years later. Well, yeah, like I said, it's been a long week. We're 2,000 years later. Hindsight's 20/20. We can look back and see. We can look back and see what the purpose was, what the message was. So in closing, I'm actually going to land this plane. To the believer, let Palm Sunday realign your view of Christ. Surrender. Celebrate Christ for what he did, for the gift that he did, and the gift that he gave us, and the sacrifice that he made. And be intentional about obeying Christ. If there are any seekers in here, anyone who's looking, anyone who's searching, recognize that the King came for you. Would he have died if you were the only one on the face of this earth? Yes, he would. Because you are that important. Each and every one of us in this room is that important to him. We didn't have to get to the point where, okay, there's enough people on the earth, I'll come do it now. If there was one person on the earth, Christ would have died for us. And if you are seeking Christ, if you have any questions in your mind, if you have any doubts in your mind, hang on to that. If you were the only one here, Christ would have died for you. And as we mentioned earlier, we've got a baptism coming up on the 27th. Anyone that has any questions, anyone that has any doubts, anyone, if you're unsure, come get with us. Come get with us. Come talk to us. I said, we'll stay here all day. I hope there's a line running down 497 over here. And I mean, there's 3 of us. We can take turns. There's 4 of us. We'll get Keith in here. I'm sure Keith, we can get Keith up here. We can bring other people in. I hope God moves to the point where there's a line to Kenny's store of people trying to get in here to be baptized, and we will stay here as long as it takes. So that being said, that's all I've got for today.